I talked about this yesterday to some degree about like they're killing Caitlin Clark, but they're killing her with paper cuts. 1,000 little cuts is how they're trying to.
Paper cuts. That's the strategy. Not a single devastating blow, but 1,000 tiny cuts designed to slowly bleed out the biggest star the WNBA has ever seen. And if you've been paying attention, you've watched it happen in real time. The Indiana Fever just dropped their promotional material for the upcoming season. All 44 games on national television, a historic first for any WNBA team. But look at who's centered in that image. It's not Caitlin Clark.
It's not the Indiana Fever that are getting all 44 of their games on national TV. It's Caitlin Clark who's getting all 44 of her games on national TV.
That's a fact. That's a fact. But this goes into what I even said to Whitlock, where I said, even during the free agency and during the draft, the whole Ravens draft, a lot of the things the Indiana Fever have done signals to them trying to be successful without Caitlin Clark rather than with her.
Kelsey Mitchell is front and center, flanked by Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston like supporting cast members. Let that sink in for a second. The player who single-handedly forced ESPN, CBS, and ION to scramble for broadcast rights, who averaged 19.2 points and 8.4 assists as a rookie, who brought 3 million viewers to WNBA games for the first time in league history. She's positioned as just another member of the ensemble. This isn't an accident. This is strategy. And before you dismiss this as overreaction to a single promotional image, understand that this is part of a pattern. During free agency, the Fever's front office made Kelsey Mitchell their vocal priority. Head coach Stephanie White went on record saying they wanted an offense that prioritizes what Kelsey does best. General manager Kelly Krauskopf compared the Fever to Apple, saying they want to be more than just the iPhone. They need iPads and MacBooks too. The subtext was deafening. We're building something bigger than Caitlin Clark.
44 Indiana Fever games being on national TV. It's Caitlin Clark. And the Indiana Fever are trying to send out the message that Caitlin Clark's just part of this ensemble. She's no bigger than Kelsey Mitchell. She's no bigger than Aaliyah Boston. She's just part of the ensemble. When do you ever see this in men's sport? Do you think the Bulls ever put out some kind of promotion about selling tickets or selling out games or TV ratings without centering and making it crystal clear it's Michael Jordan?
Yeah, they don't do that. They don't do that. It's only this league. I don't know why. It's only this league that.
Here's what makes this baffling. No other professional sports league operates this way. When Michael Jordan was selling out arenas for the Chicago Bulls in the 90s, did they center Scottie Pippen in promotional materials to make sure everyone felt equally valued? When Larry Bird was bringing Boston 3 championships, did the Celtics feature Kevin McHale front and center with Bird off to the side? The answer is obvious. You ride the star. You build around the star. You make absolutely certain that casual fans know exactly who they're paying to see. The NBA understands this instinctively. They've built an entire marketing apparatus around individual players. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander gets his own billboards in Oklahoma City. Luka Doncic is the face of the Mavericks. No ambiguity. The NFL does the same thing with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. His face is everywhere, and nobody pretends Travis Kelce is equally responsible for ticket sales. This isn't controversial. It's basic sports marketing that's worked for decades.
You think the Celtics centered Kevin McHale? If, again, there was no Twitter, social media at this time, but in their promotions, do you think they were focusing in on Kevin McHale or Robert Parrish?
Hell
and
no.
Larry Bird was kind of just off to the side, part of the ensemble? These are paper cuts. Little bitty cuts that by themselves don't mean anything. But in connection with all the other paper cuts, they're trying to kill Caitlin Clark. They're trying to send out a message. This is the difference between men and women. There is no standard when it comes to women. There is no merit-based system when it comes to women. There's a group of people with the power that sit in some sort of social media team or HR department. How can we take care of everybody? How can we make everybody?
I just said that.
But the WNBA operates under different rules. And those rules aren't about merit or market value. They're about message. Watch how this plays out in practice. The Fever drafted Raven Johnson, another small guard, when they desperately needed size and defensive versatility. They re-signed Kelsey Mitchell to a max contract extension and made sure everyone knew she was the #1 priority. They've structured their entire offseason around the premise that success means winning without Caitlin Clark being the focal point, rather than maximizing what she brings to the table. This is the paper-cut strategy in action. Individually, none of these moves seem catastrophic. You can rationalize each one. Kelsey Mitchell is a good player who deserves recognition. Building depth is smart roster construction. Promoting team chemistry over individual stars sounds noble, but add them all together, and you're watching an organization systematically minimize the most marketable athlete in women's basketball history. And they're doing it deliberately.
At that.
Feel valued or equally valued. How can we be equitable in everything that we do? That's what the WNBA is doing. They've taken an awesome gift in Caitlin Clark, and rather than try to elevate her and have her tide lift all boats, they're killing her with paper cuts and hoping that you don't notice. And when she's laying on the floor dead and she no longer sells tickets, she's not as popular, the tide doesn't rise, all the boats aren't lifted, oh, well, it's sexism or it's racism. No, it's the paper cuts. It's the lack of a merit-based standard that is killing the WNBA and killing the growth of the WNBA.
The question is why? Why would any organization sabotage its own golden goose? The answer requires understanding what the WNBA has become at the institutional level. This is a league that spent the summer of 2024 watching Caitlin Clark bring unprecedented attention and revenue, then responded by having veteran players and media members call her fan base racist. Angel Reese went on podcast tours talking about how she deserved equal credit for the WNBA's growth. Chennedy Carter body-checked Clark on national television, and league officials stayed conspicuously silent. The pattern reveals the priority structure. The WNBA's leadership isn't optimizing for growth or revenue or mainstream acceptance. They're optimizing for a specific cultural message, one that centers a particular demographic and ideological perspective. And Caitlin Clark, by virtue of who she is and where she came from, doesn't fit that narrative. She's the straight white woman from Iowa who plays fundamental basketball and appeals to middle America. That's the problem.
Because they're trying to say, well, now Kelsey Mitchell feels valued. Look what we did. We pretended that you were just as big as Caitlin Clark.
Bro, he's on to something, man. Whitlock, stir the pot, stir the pot. Keep cooking. You cooking up a pot of something with this one. I'm telling you, he's on to something. He's on to something. Only in this league does the higher ups or whoever try to make it seem like the stars aren't the stars. The NBA, they embrace the stars. They embrace Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They embrace Luka Doncic. They embraced LeBron. They embrace the stars. The NFL, they lean in on Patrick Mahomes. They leaned in on Patrick Mahomes. They lean in on Josh Allen. They lean in. Only in this league do they want to minimize the biggest star to make everybody else feel better about themselves. Y'all getting paid millions of dollars now. Why are we still running around pacifying feelings and lying? It's ridiculous.
This is insanity. And the problem is people think like she's going to leave the Indiana Fever and go to another team. And the problem with that is the other team will do the exact same thing because the league is led by a group of lesbian Marxist women.
Whoa.
It's a league that's not about merit. It's about message. It's about agenda.
So they kill her with paper cuts. They ensure she's never quite the face of the league, never quite the undisputed star, never quite given the platform that her performance and marketability have earned. They split credit. They emphasize the collective. They make sure Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston get equal billing and promotional materials, even though the data shows clearly who's driving viewership. It's death by 1,000 qualifications. And here's the really insidious part. This strategy works in the short term. The WNBA just negotiated a massive new media rights deal worth $200 million annually, nearly tripling their previous contract. Players got their wish for chartered flights and better accommodations. Salaries are climbing. Everyone's benefiting from the Caitlin Clark effect financially, even as they work to minimize her culturally. They're cashing the checks her popularity generated while simultaneously undermining the source of that popularity.
He said it's a league that's not about merit, it's about message. It's about agenda. Damn, he cooking right now.
Killing Caitlin Clark, that's nothing. To achieve their goal, to sacrifice her and to sacrifice the whole league is going to continue its decline. And they're all said, look, we bullied and we leveraged our way into these contracts that we don't deserve, into flying private that we don't deserve. We did it all off the back of Caitlin Clark, but we're not going to celebrate and we're not going to give the public what they want, which is Caitlin Clark and more players like Caitlin Clark. It's a lesbian league, and they will be led by lesbians, and preferably black lesbians. They want to repeat Black Lives Matter, just the WNBA version of Black Lives Matter. They want a league led by black lesbians.
But paper cuts eventually kill. That's the point of the metaphor. You can survive 1 or 2 or 10, but eventually you bleed out. And what happens to the WNBA when casual fans realize the league doesn't actually want to celebrate the player they came to see? What happens when Caitlin Clark's massive Iowa fan base decides the league isn't worth supporting because their investment isn't reciprocated? What happens when the next potential superstar looks at how Clark was treated and decides to take her talents to European leagues that will actually market her properly? The WNBA is betting that they can have it both ways. They can take Caitlin Clark's market value while centering everyone else in the narrative. They can cash in on her appeal to mainstream America while catering to a narrow ideological base that resents her success. They can build a sustainable business model on the back of a star they refuse to actually promote as a star. That bet is going to fail.
He was cooking. He was cooking it. I'm gonna be honest. He was cooking in that a little. He was cooking. He definitely was cooking, man. I just think it was really weird. This whole thing is really weird about how they try to minimize Caitlin Clark at every turn. No other league does this with stars. No other league does this with stars. Not stars aside, she's the biggest. Asian them, they cool, they stars in their own right. None of them are near Caitlin Clark. Respectfully. And only this league wants to minimize their biggest star and essentially kill her off, kill off her fan base. They call her fan base racist at every turn, but everybody wants to enjoy the fruits of the labor that she did because she came in here and got all y'all flying private right away. She came in here and got everybody paid. Let's keep it real. Let's keep it real, man. Get down in the comments.
Here's what makes this particularly tragic. Caitlin Clark has done everything right. She's been gracious in interviews, deflecting credit to teammates. She's never complained publicly about the physical targeting she faced as a rookie. She's embraced the pressure and performed at an elite level, despite playing for a dysfunctional organization. She's the perfect ambassador for women's basketball. Talented, humble, competitive, and broadly appealing. And the league's response has been to treat her like a problem to be managed rather than an asset to be maximized. Look at that promotional image again. Kelsey Mitchell centered, Caitlin Clark off to the side. That's not an oversight, that's a statement. It's the WNBA telling you exactly what their priorities are. And those priorities have nothing to do with growing the game or building sustainable fan engagement or creating the next generation of stars. Those priorities are about maintaining ideological control, even if it means sacrificing the most valuable player the league has ever had. The Indiana Fever could have put Caitlin Clark front and center in that promotional material. They could have been honest about why all 44 games are on national television. They could have ridden the wave instead of fighting against it. But that would require acknowledging merit over message. That would require admitting that one player matters more than the collective. That would require operating like every other successful professional sports league in America. And apparently that's a bridge too far. So they'll keep making these decisions. They'll keep splitting credit and emphasizing the ensemble, and making sure nobody's feelings get hurt by acknowledging obvious reality. They'll keep killing Caitlin Clark with paper cuts. And eventually, when the bleeding stops because there's nothing left to bleed, they'll wonder why the casual fans disappeared. They'll blame racism or sexism or whatever convenient excuse presents itself. But the truth will be simpler. They had lightning in a bottle, and they chose to snuff it out rather than let it shine. The WNBA got everything they claimed they wanted. They got mainstream attention, massive media deals, chartered flights, higher salaries, and a player who could actually move the needle with casual sports fans. Caitlin Clark delivered all of that in a single season, and their response has been to minimize her at every opportunity, to ensure she never becomes bigger than the league's preferred narrative, to make absolutely certain that her success doesn't disrupt the established hierarchy. That's the paper cut strategy, and it's going to kill more than just Caitlin Clark's star power. It's going to kill the WNBA's best chance at sustainable mainstream relevance, because casual fans don't care about ideology, or internal league politics, or who deserves credit according to some abstract notion of equity. They care about watching great players do great things. And when you tell those fans that the player they came to see isn't actually that special, that she's just part of the ensemble, that Kelsey Mitchell deserves equal billing despite vastly different market appeal, they're already leaving. Viewership for non-Caitlin Clark games dropped back to pre-2024 levels by the end of the season. The playoff ratings spike only happened when Clark's Fever were playing. The All-Star game that didn't feature her as the clear centerpiece drew modest numbers. The evidence is already there. The WNBA's growth is almost entirely dependent on one player, and that player is being systematically undermined by the organization supposedly benefiting from her presence. So what happens next? Does Caitlin Clark eventually demand a trade to a franchise that will actually build around her properly? Does she finish her contract and take her talents to a European league that will pay her what she's worth and market her appropriately? Does she just grind through a career of being underappreciated while everyone around her cashes checks generated by her star power? Or does the WNBA wake up and realize they're fumbling the greatest gift they've ever received? Based on that promotional image with Kelsey Mitchell front and center, I'm not optimistic. The paper cuts will continue, the minimization will persist, and eventually the WNBA will succeed in killing the very thing that could have saved them. Not with a single devastating blow, but with 1,000 tiny cuts that nobody wanted to acknowledge until it was too late. That's not speculation. That's just pattern recognition. And the pattern is crystal clear. The WNBA would rather maintain ideological purity than achieve mainstream success. They'd rather center the collective than celebrate the exceptional. They'd rather kill their biggest star with paper cuts than admit she's the reason for their recent success. And that choice is going to cost them everything they just gained. The only question is whether they'll figure it out before the bleeding stops.